Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Woo. Okay, okay. All right, so welcome to another installment of Vivid Visions. We've got a really great session today, and I hope you enjoy it. I'm calling this one the Common Ground. This is the Common Ground session for Kansas City. And before we jump into it, I wanted to just do some commercial activities. We do have a wonderful history tour this Saturday that's on sale, 10 to noon, down at 18th and Vine. And we also have a new partnership with the American Jazz Museum. So for those who come down for the 18th and Vine tour, walking tour, you can enjoy $2 off admission when you stop by the American Jazz Museum afterwards. So please buy a ticket, come down, stick around, come see the museum, and support. And then also I want to thank our donors. So we'd like to thank tonight all of you, and also the Neighborhood Tourism Development Fund for supporting us, and also the Muriel, McBrien, Kauffman Foundation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Hey, everybody. Good evening. Thanks for coming out tonight. So good to see all of you here. And BJ is right. What a great way to describe this session as a common ground session. We're going to try to find synergy and common ground between all the different jazz-related organizations that are up here tonight. This is a first for this organization, at least going back a number of years. And what we hope to do as we move along this evening, as we get deep into our conversation, we're going to ask our panelists to identify one initiative they are aiming at in the next quarter, the next year, and then we hope to see among the commonalities that might be there, then ask you guys to have some input into what you think might be great next steps. If you see a great next step based on what you're hearing from our panel tonight, so your input's going to be invaluable as we go forward. Let me introduce our panel, starting at the far end with Alyssa Bell. She's Bell-Jackson. She's with the Kansas City Jazz Orchestra. Then next to her is my buddy and former student, by all means, David Basse with the Kansas City Jazz Ambassadors. Many of you know him. And then BJ Jansen, the board president here for KC Jazz Alive. And next to BJ, Dr. Dina Bennett from the American Jazz Museum, obviously a major player here. And next to Dina, Rick Truman, executive director of this institution right here, otherwise known as the Folly Theater, the historic Folly Theater, right, Rick? Well, let's start with this. Maybe a great way to start would be with some introductions and some get-to-know-yous a little bit here. Alyssa, introduce yourself, give us your professional background, and just take a few minutes if you would.
Sure. I am Alyssa Bell-Jackson, Executive Director of the Kansas City Jazz Orchestra. So happy to be here with you guys tonight. So I have been with the Jazz Orchestra for a few years, first as a board member, and then last year starting as Executive Director. Prior to that, and currently, I'm also a violist, so I'm a musician as well as an administrator.
I think your instrument came with you tonight.
I did bring it tonight. I'm not going to play it tonight, but...
Shoot! I was going to say, what's the performance? Yeah.
So just a lot of background in teaching music, playing with other musicians, contracting, organizing, and all of that kind of got me into the Jazz Orchestra, where I was chair of the education committee initially, and so now I'm here.
Okay. David Basse.
Hi, I'm David Basse, and as Steve said, and I'm a recording artist and a radio commentator, a jazz fan. I come from a small town, went to country school, outdoor toilets and all that, up in Madison County, Nebraska, and came here to Kansas City when I was 19 years old after 2 years traveling on the road, places I wanted to go. And somebody said, come to Kansas City. and I came to Kansas City. I met a pianist named Joe Cartwright. We were both 19 and both from the country, and we found a home here in Kansas City, which is a great thing. And I went back to college, or went to college. I didn't do college until I was in my 50s. And I had the great honor of doing an entire semester with Steve Kraske and I, a one-on-one situation. It was a great thing. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
There's that fourth paper you still haven't turned in from October of 2022, I think.
I need a little more time, Professor Kraske.
I never hear that.
But you know
very
I'll turn
often.
it in.
Yeah. BJ.
Hi, I'm BJ Jansen. So a little bit about myself. I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm from a necessarily small town or the country, but from Cincinnati, Ohio. So I did grow up in the Midwest. I'm also a jazz musician, recording artist, play the baritone sax, have about 11 albums out, lived in New York City for a while before coming here, Philadelphia and some other areas. I also have a day gig working at H&R Block. I'm a change leader there. And outside of serving for the president of Kansas City Jazz Alive, I mean, it's just a passion, supporting and finding the common ground on how we can push the music forward. So this is a very important panel today.
It's great. Dr. Bennett.
Hello, Dr. Dina Bennett, Executive Director of the American Jazz Museum. By training, I'm an ethnomusicologist who specializes in African American music and culture. When I started my PhD program, I told my professor that I didn't want to be a tenure-track faculty member. I wanted to work in museums. And so I've had the fortune to work in 2 other African American museums, the B.B. King Museum and Delta Interpretive Center, and then we built a National Museum of African American Music in Nashville, Tennessee, that opened in 2021. So I came back here, I'm from Topeka, in 2021 after that museum opened to become the Director of Collections and Curatorial Affairs at the American Jazz Museum, then became Deputy Director, Interim Executive Director, and now I'm Executive Director, and I've been in the role for about a year and a couple of months.
Okay.
I play piano and clarinet.
Yes,
We have the makings of a band here.
we do.
Rick Truman.
And I can carry the equipment.
There we go.
I love it.
That's the most important job.
One of these things is not like the other. I was born and raised in Kansas City, and I'm the only. Oh no, you were born and raised here. But I am not a musician. My name is Rick Truman. I'm the president and CEO of the Folly. I actually went to college to be a stage actor and director, and decided the gig lifestyle was not for me. I needed stability. I needed a paycheck. I did not need the constant rejection of "thank you, next" at auditions. And so I went back and I got my master's in nonprofit management and decided I wanted to be an arts administrator. I worked for about 18 years at a local cabaret theater up the street, and was very excited for me, not her, when I found out that Gail Tallis was retiring, because I'm like, the job at the Folly is open. That is the pinnacle. That's where I want to be. I was very fortunate to actually do shows on this stage with a local theater company in the 90s, and so I feel like I've come back home, and I've been here for about 3 years.
It's a pretty good panel. Let's give them a round of applause for being here tonight. Alyssa, let me come back to you here. Would you just take a minute to describe the mission of the Jazz Orchestra, what you're attempting to do, how you do what you do?
Yeah, so the Kansas City Jazz Orchestra is dedicated to promoting the heritage of Kansas City through performance and education. So we do, large-scale performances at venues such as the Folly Theater and the Kauffman Center and other venues around town. We also do a lot of smaller-scale performances and education projects. So master classes at the Kansas City Public Library and at Kansas City, Kansas Community College. We're working on partnering with other organizations. Many of you are sitting here tonight with us to try to bring our musicians and our sort of network of musicians that we have together to create new projects and to expand the projects we're working on. Also try to get audience members who might not normally come to a jazz concert to be interested in coming to a jazz concert through different types of programming. So we're just trying to do a lot of outreach and always striving to have the highest level of performance and artistic quality possible.
How much success are you having getting first-timers?
So we did a concert on Saturday, actually, at the Kauffman Center. It was a Level Up concert. It was a video game concert. I know a few people here were at that concert. And we had a lot of young kids at that concert. And we also had a lot of teenagers. And I feel like teenagers is like the hardest thing for us to get to come to concerts because, I don't know, they have a million things they do, you know, and parents are driving them around and their siblings around, so getting a teenager is difficult to do. And I think through the programming, we're really working on trying to capture a wider net of folks who might want to come out, and just trying to diversify our programming throughout the season so that we're able to reach as many people as possible. So I would say we don't have the hard numbers on who's come for the first time yet, but to me, it seemed like there were a lot of newcomers to our concert on Friday or last Saturday.
Encouraging.
Yeah.
David Basse, tell us about the mission of the KC Jazz Ambassadors.
The Kansas City Jazz Ambassadors is here to support musicians, and we look at doing that in many ways. And over the past 5 years that I've been involved, I started as the editor of the Jam magazine. At that point, we were totally online, and we had kind of run the ship ashore, our predecessors and so on. And with the help of Mark Edelman, we took off and remade the Kansas City Jazz Ambassadors into a new version of it. It's the same mission. The same mission is to support the musicians. But one of the things we've been working on recently is dividing our efforts into categories. So younger musicians, working musicians, older musicians, retired musicians, like that. So different categories, and we're defining those now on our website. And we have the magazine back out in full swing, which is, that was my effort at the beginning. It was like, this magazine has to be here as part of the fabric of Kansas City and the music of Kansas City.
Oh, all right.
How are you able, David, supporting the printing of that magazine? How is that going? The financial support you need to get that done.
Interesting enough, Steve, we get support from the people. We get support from donors. We have sponsorships. We have donors, and we have membership. And through those three things, we keep going rather nicely. Linda McShann has been with the organization about the same amount of time as I have, and Linda was the secretary and I was the editor. And Mark Edelman, when he left, he said, Linda, you're going to be the treasurer, and David, you're going to be the president. and then you probably, some of you know Mark Edelman, but so he says, I've got some tickets to the Kauffman tonight. You want to go? And I went there, and at the break he said, I said, well, who's going to be the editor of the magazine now? And he goes, you are. I said, I'm going to be the president and the editor? He says, yeah, you can do it. And I said, well, what about Linda? Same thing. You're going to be the secretary and the treasurer. So it was kind of an uphill climb. But, it's very rewarding because, we have a post office box, and Linda will say, oh, I went to the post office box, and you'll never know what, you never guess what happened. And so people do support it. And that is just, we're so thankful for that because it's an organization that's been around 40 years. I think I was at the first meeting, the last meeting of the Mayor's Jazz Commission, because we got to yakking about being jazz, who can be a jazz ambassador? And then the tide shifted, and the Jazz Ambassadors were born from that.
Maybe we need to have an office again. B.J. Jansen, tell us about KC Jazz Alive. What's your mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to look at my cheat sheet here because we actually have a new mission, and I want to make sure that I state it correctly. But we're seeking to advocate, educate, and amplify the Kansas City jazz scene, and that's through education and awareness. But I think the key piece here is we're doing this through collaborations and partnerships. And so this right here, this panel, is one of those pieces in action of what we're doing today to bring groups together and find the niches for each group and how can we collaborate better and how can we find that common ground. So yeah, that's one way we do the Vivid Visions. We also have Spotlight Charlie Parker, which is our premier event. We're going into, is it 13th or 14th year? Steve's in the back. Is it 13? Yeah. So we've been doing this for quite a long time with the Spotlight Charlie Parker. We're the only dedicated 13 years going celebration of Charlie Parker, and that's been one of our activities to where we've been bringing other groups in. Many of the folks here last year, we had a steering committee, and many of them were on that steering committee and helping to bring that to life. And we are continuing that through Emily's leadership this year. So, yeah.
Dr. Bennett, the mission of the American Jazz Museum.
So the mission of the American Jazz Museum is to celebrate jazz through our 4 pillars, which are education, exhibition, performance, and research at one of the crossroads of jazz, which is 18th and Vine. So historically, there are 4 major jazz centers. There's New Orleans, Kansas City, Chicago, and New York. And so we're really proud to be one of those. And that's what we do. Yeah.
Okay. Rick, the Folly.
So the Folly really has a twofold mission. One is to preserve the historic building. It opened in September of 1900, so we will be 125 years old this fall. So preserving that as an important part of Kansas City architecture, Kansas City history is very important. But preserving alone is not the only mission, because obviously that means that it's just a static building. It's also about what happens inside that building. It's very important to us to present diverse, inclusive programming that represents all people within Kansas City. So we often like to say that no matter who you are, what your story is, you should find yourself represented at the Folly, and that means both in the seats, but also on the stage. And jazz is one piece of the programming that happens as part of that.
Okay. David, let me start with you. I don't want to put Alyssa on the spot with every first question here. What's your organization's proudest achievement going back a year or so? What would you point to, David?
My proudest achievement was to get the magazine actually back in print. So we had it online, and it was easily sort of easily accessible there. Not perfect. It's better now, but we used a blog function of the website to put the magazine online for quite a while, and it was John Scott from the Green Lady who said, "You need to get that magazine back in print," and we talked several weeks about, once a week we'd meet and talk about things to do, and I presented it to the board, and there was lukewarm response, maybe 50%, maybe 40 or 50%, and the idea that we would charge for the magazine, which we hadn't done before. So when in 2000 or late 2019, I went by the American Jazz Museum, and in the coat closet there were more than 1,000 jam magazines, and they were just there, stacks, different, and I took them all and put them in my car and recycled them, because it was like, people would look at them, and then when the pandemic came around, you're not going to pick a magazine up off a table in a bar and then, pick it up after someone else has picked it, like that kind of thing. So it got into this sort of zone where, I don't have any paper, or don't do anything. And then as things changed up, it was a time to get the magazine back in print, and we did. And I think
why
we're
is
all
it
very happy that
important?
we did.
Why is it important in this day and age to have a physical magazine?
I don't know, Steve. I mean, you're a journalist.
I like physical stuff. I just ask the questions here, David. That's all I do is ask
right.
questions. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I don't have answers. I just ask questions. Yeah.
And the tough question.
It's something that people ask about. And, you know, if you've ever been on the cover of Jam magazine or on the cover of any magazine, it's like, oh, that's cool. I'm on the cover of the magazine. You know, Amber's been on the cover of the magazine. And,
if you ever go to a Broadway show,
yeah.
there's people like a collector or things, or even passing down, even in the Black community, the Jet magazine.
Oh, yeah.
All of these things are collectors, but also history. And so,
Yeah.
you know, if we start archiving and doing these things and being able,
Yeah.
I was just telling Linda, we should be having all of these issues from volume 1, so people can go back and research as a research tool and look at who has been, you know, through Kansas City, the names, you know, what's been happening since day 1 to current.
It's actually at the Labuddy Library of UMKC. Just about every issue is there. Now, the recent issues are not there. And I had lunch with Chuck Haddix recently, and he said, you know, you bring those over, you know. And during the time where we did the online version during the pandemic, I also want to, you know, make a printed version of that, I guess, and at least keep one issue of it there, one version of it, because there's a lot of things that happened during the pandemic, very interesting and free-thinking things, you know. If I could just add another thing, we've got 3 new things that happened since the pandemic, which are gig grants, which we did during the pandemic. You could just write in and say, I do gigs around town, and blah, blah, blah. My name is this, I play the guitar. Okay, we'll send them a check. So we sent a lot of checks out. I think it was about $37,000 or something like that in gig grants, $150 at a time. What, you know, at the time people say, well, that's a pretty good wage, $150 to go play a night at a bar. And then Jazz Futures, which on next Thursday night, Carl Allen will bring his band to VU, and they'll play in a bar, and we've done it in various places around the city, and it gives young musicians a chance to play in a bar and you know, entertain, say hello to the people, you know. Introduce everybody in the band, stuff like that. And then the Jam Awards is also very popular, and that's another program we started where we have an award show, and maybe eventually, Rick, we can come here to the Folly and do a night, and some people can actually play, you know, the winners and so on. So these are all fun things, and it puts the spotlight on the musicians, and you know, that's what we're about.
BJ, proudest achievement of KC Jazz Alive?
Well, that's a loaded question, isn't it? I have many proud achievements, especially over the last year. I think one of them was last year's Spotlight Charlie Parker. We pulled off an entire month. We brought in many new collaborators. We had almost 300 different events listed. It was amazing. We grew year over year, 314%, and formed a new partnership with the KCJO. So, I mean, that's one. And I'm just going to stop at one.
Stop at one?
Because that was the question, Steve.
Okay. I like how you listen. Dr. Bennett, how about the Jazz Museum?
Yeah, so last year we did a collaboration with the Kansas City Repertory Theater, and they have a program, you know, where they can take their plays into the community. And so we were one of the venues, and the play happened to be For Women, which is by Nina Simone, and it chronicles her writing of Mississippi GD. You know, that she wrote right after the bombing of the 16th Avenue Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, where we lost 4 little girls. And so that was so successful. When I pulled up to the museum, there was a line outside the door for people waiting to get in, and I was thinking, oh, I wonder what they're here for. I just knew they were not there for the play, or not that big of a crowd. We had over 100 people, but I was just like, I wonder what's going on. And it was for that event, and that was really a very proud moment for us.
Very good. How about you, Rick, at the Folly?
Boy, it's really hard to pick one thing, particularly with as much stuff as happens in this building. But I guess artistically, in terms of particularly our jazz series, I'll preface this by saying in looking at next year's season, I reached out to several of the board members who are either jazz subscribers or jazz fans, and I said, what do you think the philosophy is of what we should present at the Folly? And one person said, I think you should pick artists that we're going to sell out every concert. And I thought, okay, well, from your lips to God's ears, and if you have the magic, touch of, I know these 6 people are going to sell out, then tell me what the secret is. But also, to me, that was, you need to be picking all these people who are household names, who have been around for a long time. It's like, well, that's not pushing any new horizons. That's not exposing people to new ideas. And so artistically, one of the things I'm really excited about that we did this past year is we brought in Helen Sung for a concert with Bach aria soloists. And I will fully admit, when it started, I thought, I am going to get so many complaint letters and people are going to be so mad at me, because the concert started with a Bach piece. And I was like, that's not what I was told the concert was. I was told this was jazz. What's going on? And it was a fascinating progression to show this is kind of how improvisation started, and here's how it's gone, and here's where we are now. And it ended with the world premiere piece that Helen wrote to be played with Bach aria soloists. And it was a fascinating evening, and the journey was just very, not only intellectually interesting, but musically very pleasant. So it was an exciting night.
So wait a minute. So Bach improvised?
Yeah, that's what
What?
Alyssa, how about the Jazz Orchestra, a proud achievement?
Sure. So, like everyone here, that's a very difficult question to answer. And in my short time with the Jazz Orchestra, there's many things that we've done. I would say, for me personally, it's one thing I've really tried to work on is forming relationships and expanding relationships and partnerships, and both with other organizations in town, as well as my own colleagues and our existing musicians and that kind of thing. And so I feel like, just as a whole, over this year, I've been able to connect people that may not normally have been connected with the Jazz Orchestra, and that feels really nice. Obviously, working on continuing to establish those relationships with the people that we already have and expand those as well. So for me, and I think for us as an ensemble, performing ensemble, as if we are a musician, having those relationships with the people that you're performing for, having the interaction with the audience, and having not just a show and then you're done, but it's playing and then having the conversation and talking about music and what is it that brings us together. Like, that's a huge part of what we do, and I feel like we've been getting better at doing that over the past year and are going to continue to do that on into the future.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm really impressed by what I'm hearing. This is interesting, a lot of interesting things happening. Dr. Bennett, what do you hope to achieve this year? Is there a goal that you're aiming at this year, and what would that be?
So last year, every year we celebrate Charlie Parker's birthday, which is in August. A lot of us do around this table. And we started off a couple of years trying to have an outdoor concert, and we called it In the Yard. Charlie Parker's nickname was Yardbird, so In the Yard. We would do it on our Great Mall. And we did that for a couple of years, and then last year we switched our format, and we did one day on his actual birthday. We did one day of continuous programming. We started at 7:30 in the morning by the statue. We have the Parker head that's on the grounds, and had a musician tribute with Bobby Watson and Lonnie McFadden. and Dan Thomas, who is a saxophonist who is performing in our Blue Room later that evening.
You got
And
Bobby Watson there at 7:30 in the morning.
we did, yeah, we did. We really did.
He was up
That,
from the
ladies and
gig.
gentlemen, is a singular.
He was up
achievement.
already. He was at the gig. He just came over, right?
So I think we want to, and then we did some other things. We actually had Willie Cole at the museum. He's the one that did the Charlie Parker saxophone sculptures that are hanging in the airport. So we had one of those we put in our atrium on display that week, and then we had Willie Cole and the horn doctor, Mike Corrigan.
Yeah.
Yes,
He
we
is.
had them come into a presentation about the history behind that project, and we just had a whole bunch of programming. So I'm hoping again this year that we can do it even bigger and better. There's only one way, and that's up for us. There.
What's the biggest challenge to getting that done?
So getting that done is probably the funding, because we want to compensate those folks that are taking, that are participating in the events.
Right.
So that, and we have the space. We have the space. We use the Blue Room. We use the out by the sculpture. We use the atrium. The Changing Gallery had an exhibit, but that was actually a Negro League exhibit because we switch with them, we alternate with them. But yeah, probably the funding, just to make sure that we're paying people for their time and their efforts. We want to be fair about that.
Rick, what's your big goal for this year, and what's your biggest challenge to getting that done?
So, when the pandemic happened, one thing that the Folly did that I can talk a lot about and say how proud I am, because I had nothing to do with it, so I feel like I'm not bragging about myself, was, and I can brag about Gail because she's here in the room, the Folly started a series called Live from the Lounge, and it was a way to continue to connect with Folly audiences, a way to give musicians some work and income, and a way for musicians to continue to connect to their audiences. And it was a virtual music series. It happened in this room. It was broadcast on, on Zoom, I guess. And it was, a pay to buy a ticket, and then they could also tip the musicians. And that way, there was still music going on, but in a safe environment, which I just thought was genius. And then when things started opening back up again, we opened it up with, limited seating. And then once things were really open, we just opened it up to full seating. And we all agreed, this is important for us to continue doing. This is important for us to continue working with Kansas City musicians and Kansas City artists. But after a while, it got to be hard to sell a $22 ticket in a space like this when I can go to Corvino or the Uptown Lounge and spend $22 on 2 drinks and still hear the music. So how do we make that something that people want to go to? And so it kind of died a slow, quiet death. And this year, particularly as we hit our 125th anniversary, what I really would want for us to do is find a way to bring that back, but do it in a way that's connected to the historic side. It's hard to do a show on the Folly stage because you have 1,000 seats to fill. But we have an idea for a small, intimate experience, speakeasy type concept on the stage. And what I want to do is bring in Kansas City musicians, Kansas City artists, because those people should be a part of the legacy of that building. That's something else that somebody has said that's performed here. They're like, I performed at the Folly, but I haven't been at the Folly. So connecting those musicians to the historic building is something I really want to get done. And the challenge really is just finding a way to communicate that to people, because it'll be out of the box. It'll be different. And we don't always gravitate to different. So finding out how to sell that and get people on board.
Alyssa, what's your goal this year for the jazz orchestra? What's your big challenge?
So one big goal I have, which is part of how I got here in the first place, is our education. So I should have mentioned this when you asked what my proudest moment was, but one of them was we played at the Missouri Music Educators Association conference this January, and so we played in front of thousands of educators and students for the first time. Our organization has not played there before. But since I transitioned into my role now, our education, although we do a lot of summer camps, we do a lot of education programs. Over the summer, we do like 20 performances in day camps. We do master classes and we do workshops, throughout the year. Since my focus has kind of shifted elsewhere since my placement here as executive director, my goal would be to reinvigorate the education side and see what else we could be doing that we're not doing, or how to expand the things we are already doing. And I would say the challenge, obviously, for all of us here, I think a challenge is always funding, figuring out how you're going to be able to afford to do this. But the other piece of it is through our work this year, we've been forming committees that have been working on different projects. And one of the committees that existed before, the Education Committee, is now reinvigorated. And so getting that committee engaged and seeing how they can help us connect with educators around the area to not only get into the schools and to work with students, but also get them involved in what's going on with the organization outside of the schools. So,
you mentioned funding. How concerned are you about funding going forward in this current political environment with cuts to the NEH? And
You had to go there, didn't you, Steve?
About as concerned as everybody's face in here is. I mean, it's, it's a tumultuous time. I think
it just gets harder.
It does get harder. It gets harder all the time, and I think we just have to keep doing what we're doing and keep going and engaging with our community, because the community, in my experience, has been the biggest support, both financially but also, emotionally or, relationship-wise. And I think we can engage a lot of people who are not already engaged in jazz in our community in a meaningful way that can help redirect our focus toward that instead of, what's going on right now.
David, what's your big goal for the Jazz Ambassadors this year, and what are you up against?
I think the latest thing is that we have four different funds basically that support various things, or three funds and a fourth one coming up. We work with Jamie Abersol's program, and those shows get done in the schools around the city, high school level mostly, and then we do a series in the summer at the Folly, which we've just negotiated. Kara is a part of that, Kara Smith, who's here, and Mike Parkinson is a part of that. So we have these four different things: the Tommy Ruskin Fund, and the John Booth Fund, and the taking care of the musicians and so on. And we have a very democratic board. We started with 4 people on our board originally, 4, maybe 5, and then we have Ebony Fondra's now the vice president, and we've kind of kicked into high gear. And last time we spoke, last time we had a meeting, one of the board members said, I want to rewrite stuff on our website so people know what they're supporting, in depth. And so we're going to look at that tomorrow at our meeting, and then start to really define those different aspects of how we help people. The elder statespersons of jazz, or elder statesmen of jazz, as it used to be called, that was a great organization. When I turned 50, I was inducted into the elder statesmen. And I think about all the people, all the musicians who were inducted over the past 25 years, and that's what happens. We all get old. We're going to do what we're going to do as long as we can do it, and then we're going to do something else. And we'll be here in spirit, but we won't be in our body, But Kansas City has such a great history. Oh my gosh. And so many young people coming here from all over the country, all over the world, to play jazz music. And they're good. They're really good at what they do. And it's just amazing to be, have a 50-year career in jazz, which I have now with Joe Cartwright, 51 years now, and see that there are people 18, 19, 20 years old coming from New Orleans, coming from Chicago, coming from Italy, coming from Mexico, coming from Chile, to be in Kansas City. Why? Because it's one of the greatest places in the world to be a musician. And then when you hit the wall and think, oh, I'm totally broke. I'm living in a city. I can't pay my rent. You've got somebody to call on in the jazz ambassadors. And so all these things come into us, which is really, I think it's a good goal for us, and I think it's a good way to go forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
BJ, the goal this year for KC Jazz Alive?
I would say at a high level, it's keeping this dialogue and going and turning it into action. So I think we're hearing all these great things and all the great things that Kansas City is doing around jazz and the history and everything. And sometimes we look around and, the folks here in Kansas City don't realize how good they have it or what they have. I think that's the goal, is how can we work together? How can we bring the organizations to bring out the best? And as Dave said, there are folks all over the world that know about Kansas City jazz, that understand it, but we need everybody here to understand that. We're hearing about, Rick's talking about bringing Kansas City first kind of vibe to the series. That's exactly what we were doing with Spotlight Charlie Parker. I think we should chat about that, how we could collaborate there. Dr. Dina Bennett was talking about the amazing all-day celebration that you guys did last year. We definitely want to collaborate again on that. Kansas City Jazz Orchestra and the education programs. I mean, it's fantastic. There's Jamie Ebersol, probably one of the most generous benefactors of all of jazz. Jamie, if you're out there watching. Hey. But it's just, how can we all find a way to bring it all together, And I think that is the most important goal for our organization going forward.
That's a great lead into one of the money questions tonight, which is how can we all collaborate together to build the kind of synergy that we're, I think, all trying to reach here. And I just want to throw it open to all of you. What needs to happen here? BJ said it very well. You all are sharing some common goals, some common interests, obviously. What can we do to begin moving together maybe a little bit more as one, as opposed to 5 different entities that we have here tonight? Rick, do you want to start?
Sure. I mean, for me, it's reminding myself of the importance of getting out of my own bubble. I've had an idea in my head for at least 2 months, maybe longer, that I've been wanting to talk to Dr. Bennett about with the American Jazz Museum, and it's just finding the time to pick up the phone. And
you have the floor, Rick.
Well, I told her we need to go to have coffee, so I started that.
Yep.
But it's so easy to get involved in your own world and be like, oh, I'm working on this,
Right.
and remembering to value getting outside of that, and that's for me where it starts. I can't say about anybody else's priorities, but I have to remember my priorities aren't just what I can do here, it's what we can do together. Because we bring in 6 jazz artists a year, and why are they just coming on that stage doing a concert and leaving? Is there a way that we can work together to broaden that investment in getting them here? And it's just taking some time to stop, think about it, pick somebody else's brain, and then go for it. I mean, yes, it's the funding and everything else, but it starts with taking the time to brainstorm about it.
Yeah. Would it help if this organization brought you all together, the godfather and mothers together, more often? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, maybe.
3 times a year? I'm just throwing out.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I've gone to lunch with Alyssa, and I see David from time to time. I've been on Zooms with BJ. I'm just meeting Rick for the first time today. But I don't know who wants another meeting, but, is it all of us together at some kind of round table ever so often to kind of come together? And I know the communication would, be a little more consistent, and we know more about people are doing, instead of me finding out a jazz artist has come to the Folly and has gone. And
I mean, just the idea of what you just said, Rick, about you have these world-renowned people coming in. Why not get more out of that time? They're not flying out till Saturday or Sunday morning a lot of times anyway. So how about somebody else? David?
I wrote down some notes because I can ramble like crazy. You probably know that because I was in your class and you know I did. But anyway, I think that bringing musicians in town that can hang out for a while is a great thing. And we had Christian McBride here for 12th Street Jump, maybe 2017 or something like that. And he got in just in time to be picked up and taken to the place where we were playing. Came up on the stage, said hello, picked up a bass in his jeans, and started playing music. And when we got done with that, he hadn't eaten all day, that kind of thing. And there was a line of people waiting to talk with him. And he stood until the last 7 or 8 year old kid came up and said, "What's that instrument you're playing? It's so big." "Oh, okay, touch it, play with it, do something, And it was like, that's where it really comes alive. When I was 16, a band called the Don Ellis Jazz Orchestra came to my high school. And that was a 23, 24-piece band with a string quartet and 3 drummers. And they evolved into all this stuff and went crazy. And I was totally blown away by that. And it made me really want to be a jazz musician, really do something with jazz music. So something like, the pub crawls we used to have back in the day through our organization, the KC Jazz and Blues Festivals from 1983 to 2003, bringing in 50 or 60 acts here for a weekend that go, they got time to go out to a club or go have dinner with some people, that kind of thing. And nothing better than playing in a nightclub and somebody walks in that you think is, just the best. Andy Kirk, do you remember that name?
Oh, sure.
So Mary Lou Williams played the piano with Andy Kirk. Mm-hmm. And she only got on the records because the other piano player, the guy piano player, got too drunk to be at the recording session, and she wrote the charts, so she played the piano, and that turned Andy Kirk's band into a household name back in the 1930s. He sold million-seller records, maybe 20 or 30 of them, back in the day, and him and Buddy Tate came in and sat like 2 tables back from us, and we're like, wow, that's amazing, I mean, they're 85, 90-year-old guys,
right?
That we all. So I think that what we could do is we have our times, we have our monthly meetings and all, and do our various organizations, but maybe 3 or 4 times a year, get together and just talk like this about bigger ideas where we can do something that really is for the musicians more than for the public.
Alyssa, what do you think?
I mean, I love everything you guys are saying.
I do too. Yeah.
You have the orchestra to pull it off.
Exactly. Well, one thing I was thinking as I was sitting here is just that all of us, even though we have a lot of similar goals, we all have something different to offer. And I think that is like ripe for collaboration. And the more we can talk, and I mean, individually with all of you, I remember, BJ, when you guys first approached us last year about collaborating, and I was just like, yes, finally, like let's do this thing together. And when we got together, Dr. Dina, and had lunch, it was like, it just felt good to make the connection. And Rick and I have been talking about collaborating on our seasons next season, as far as how can we get our season subscribers to be more engaged with both of our programming and that kind of thing. So I think conversation as a group is great, but I also think one-on-one is great, and the more of it the better, and that's the only way we're going to know what's happening. So
BJ, you're listening to all this. I'm curious what's running through your mind.
Well, I think it's time to get tactical, and what I mean by that is
what was the word you just used?
Tactical.
Tactical.
Right.
Okay.
We got to get hands-on, and we got to make things happen. So, yeah, we can have the meetings. Yeah, we should. Absolutely. I would be happy to help with my organization to facilitate that. I think, though, the second piece of it that I kept on hearing is funding.
Mm-hmm.
And funding and funding and funding. And we know it's going to be more competitive and it's going to be harder. Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing, and Alyssa already touched on it. We're all doing different things. Let's find our niche and then let's collaborate and bring it together for Kansas City.
Yeah. Dr. Bennett, anything else you want to add at this point?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I'm excited about what's being discussed here, and that we've opened up here together, this conversation, and we are receptive to each other's ideas,
Yeah.
and we respect each other. The respect is here, so I'm really...
You know, one thing that comes
Glad
up
to be here.
often in these conversations from month to month or every few months is, and this comes with all kinds of baggage attached to it, but David, you mentioned it, this idea of a jazz festival in town. We obviously, our last experience with that wasn't great, made a lot of headlines, but that's a number of years ago now. And I'm just wondering, is that in the mix? Is it too soon to tackle that idea again? What do you all think?
Well,
BJ has an idea.
again, I always think, we should crawl before we walk. That's a big task to pull off. It's not impossible. It's extremely doable. It's extremely doable if we all commit to it. Everybody on this panel, everybody in the room. So I will say it's definitely not outside of the realm of possibility. But, I would like to see actions and steps, and, if that starts with the meeting and then actions coming from that and collaborations, and we start small and build from there. Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Bennett?
Yeah, definitely starting small, because, we're talking about these funding issues and how it's getting, a little bit worse than it has been before. So I'm not sure how we would fare with that unless we did start small, like you said, BJ, and kind of build up.
Yep.
I know that last festival got a lot of negative press. I was somebody who was writing some of those stories.
Okay.
Having said that,
Is
it was
that
one of the
your fault?
happiest weekends of my life. It was just a glorious weekend of bouncing around and seeing different legendary artists all over our 18th and Vine area. Well, listen, you guys have been listening to different ideas getting kicked out here. I'm wondering what you're thinking. What's caught your attention? Is there one thing? What's the one thing you think we should be focusing on collectively in the next year, in the next quarter? I'm just going to throw it open here. What do you think? You've heard some ideas here. Where are we going? Yes, sir. One idea.
It seems to me that even though everybody on the panel has a different angle on this, ultimately the objective is to build audiences, period.
Build audience.
Build audiences.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And you're not going to do that if you're attracting gray hairs, white hairs, no hairs. You've got to find a way to attract 20, 30, 40, 50-somethings.
Your kids.
And I haven't come across anything that works yet. So I'm starting to think, instead of attracting those people that come to us, maybe we figure out a way to go to them and go to where they are already assembled. Where are 20 and 30 and 40-somethings? What are they attracted to? How can we bring Saturday afternoon soccer matches at some park? I don't know. But it just seems to me that if we're trying to attract people like many of us in this room, they're spinning our wheels.
Can I jump off what you're saying?
Yes, please.
So, I agree with what you're saying, because that's what normally I see. I'm also a musician here. I'm a musician, I'm my own band, I gig, teacher, all that stuff, all in the sun. But I think that we do focus on, like you guys both spoke on the Charlie Parker, you spend a lot of time, and of course, as we should, because it's from here and all those things, but then you have to look at, when you take jazz, a lot of these young musicians, I'm out here watching, even myself, we're expanding on the genre, and so we need to start getting those type of musicians in, not just always focusing on, our pillars of our jazz godfathers. we're already going to do that through education. We're already going to do that through, Charlie's birthday or whatever. But you got to see what's happening now. The things that I'm listening to was current and things like that. I hear these things in New York, and these are things that we can bring here, and you can build stuff around it's almost like a new age of jazz fusion embedded with original to soul, hip hop, but it's also in this jazz. And there's a lot of artists, not even named artists yet, but upcoming artists that is doing that, and they're getting that crowd. And they're getting that young crowd. I can name just a handful of those people just here that are in the city that you guys probably don't even know the names of. And so getting the recognitions of that, I think that can start building that foundation of trying to get some of those younger demographic, and I'm kind of in the middle. I'm not yet, I don't go over the hill yet, but
Be careful. Yeah.
But I still have a ear to the younger, since I work with those. I teach on the middle and high school, but I'm also on the college level, professor at KCC. So, and those kids and what they're bringing in. So,
Where do you envision something like that happening? Just if there were no barriers, where would you take that kind of performance?
So, I don't know if you guys remember, when we had our jazz, and we'd have the corporate woods kind of festival, things like that. We can still do some type of a concept, and what I was thinking was, you guys meet once a month or whatever. I was just telling Linda, some type of coalition to where you're bringing all the groups like we are doing now, but then there's a focus each year, each quarter, where we're going to focus on this, or maybe just yearly, we're going to focus on this. We're going to bring all of our resources together. It sounds like there's an education piece of each and every one of you. So you're pulling in these programs can be in the school. You're getting these people. You can build a workshop around it. Bring these kids and say they're do it in the morning, but then you're bringing in the artists at night. It's like a full day kind of festival type of thing.
In schools, and then maybe at the Blue Room or somewhere like that in the evening.
Bigger is always nothing against the Blue Room. I'm just thinking bigger. I'm thinking bigger than just in a club.
Okay.
Yes. Go ahead. If anybody wants to.
We got lots. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, I got lots of ideas here.
I was wondering how many people remember the Jazz in the Parks in the Plaza, and how that was just such a big scene because everybody knew. I think it was Sunday night, and it was in the summers, and it was free, and it was just go there, right? And a lot of times you didn't know who was playing it, but they were great. It was just a great thing. So. But I was thinking about where is the central location now that Kansas City is so expansive, and I don't know, but I think one of the key things about that summer thing was people just knew it was hey, what are we gonna do? We're gonna go down there, right? And so you were young.
I see it in
you
the
didn't
summer,
have
yeah.
to know that, who to be going to see. You were just going to that program, and so I kind of. I hear what you're saying, and then it's an issue of where do you do that? I don't know.
They're building them down in the West Bottoms too. That could be right now. If you're for some reason, I'm thinking of Lemonade Park. That's out during the summertime, outdoors. It's kind of like a festival kind of scene. It's not too overly big, but you could build something around that area. You could maybe have programming, or something you could bring in the black box. You could have stuff there. Where you're having classes or whatever, given maybe during the day or whatever, and then
Right.
around the corner you have the outdoor venue with Lemonade Park. You have all this whole coalition of people coming together, and you're bringing in, these venues as well. My mind is going crazy right now, so.
I saw a bunch of other. Yes.
I just wanted to bounce off of some of those things. Going back to younger adults, I think that there's a lot not put all that power together and make some small but impactful moves, like create a Young Friends of Jazz, where you all come together and you plan programming that benefits that age group, whether it's learning more about jazz history or coming together and meeting young people, meeting new musicians. But then on top of that, like a season pass for those young friends or some sort of membership incentive. Why don't you have a dip your toes at each organization? You get in this pass tickets to the Folly, tickets to the Blue Room or to the museum. You get to meet there's a lot of potential synergy in the room, and it's little small things like that that don't always seem like they'll make a difference. But with funding being an issue, we come together.
Rick, what did you think of that, combining like that? Does that idea have legs to you as a guy who runs this place?
I think so. I love that idea of Young Friends of Jazz, and that way it's just not Young Friends of this organization, Young Friends of that organization. There's an opportunity across the board. I don't know if anybody's noticed, there's construction across the way here at Barney Alice Plaza. I mean, in my heart of hearts, I'm like, that becomes an outdoor venue where we can do a jazz concert over there and something happening here at the Folly, maybe on the same night or something during the day, something here at night. I would love to see that idea explode of doing something in a festival type environment that has both an outdoor and an indoor component.
Is that plaza going to be there? Are they rebuilding it?
Yes.
Is that what it's going to
be? The plan is for it to open by the World Cup. They'll have parking underneath like there was before, but then they'll have instead of a flat park like it was, it'll be sloped, but it'll kind of be a natural incline down towards where there can be performances.
Wow.
So it's kind of a natural environment for that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I have this ongoing request that I'm not living in Kansas City anymore, but the side door lounges in Connecticut at a hotel, there's a beer in, and I'm noticing there are a lot of hotels around. Can you talk any hotel here into being like a place where people would travel to? And I realize that's not really for the younger generation. So that's one idea. And then having this like national network of hotels that are really known to be like hot spots for jazz. And then the other is to have a passport book. This is kind of one of these things that they do in museums and other cities.
It's come here now. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have like a jazz passport?
That's interesting.
I think we do.
I would just comment on that. Young people travel. I like to go to speakeasies at hotels. I'm in my 30s. There's a particular hotel in the market in Chicago, and they have a nice bar lounge on the first floor. But you go down to the basement, and then there's this small space where they have live jazz that's fused with hip hop and R&B, and it packs out to like 75 to 100 people in the room, and it's such a great vibe because it's just you're meeting different people, the beverages are nice, and then the attractions are really good. So
The keyword was vibe. I think in that
Yeah,
age group,
vibe.
that 30 to 45 or even 50, they want a vibe. They want a vibe. They
Yeah.
want to go to a
An
club
experience.
where
They want an
there's great
experience,
music and
yeah.
great venue, or- yes.
Yeah,
And so
for
also
sure.
the Easter in Harlem has a speakeasy. So it's a restaurant.
Ginny's.
And Ginny's Lounge.
Yeah.
So when I was in my 20s, I went
These spots. I used to live in New York.
And so young people like to go around and just want the great experience.
Cellar
of not
dog.
just sitting and watching performance, but interacting with other people. And
Right.
and
Do you know
Okay.
about that because of your blog or just word of mouth or
So I'm
central site?
I have a unique journey, so I've lived in all of these places, and so hearing about them, whether it be like visiting the Apollo or just at work, of course, living in New York, Harlem, the proximity wasn't far from my place, I could walk there. I've seen it on advertisement on buses or apps, like social media and things like that. That's how I learned about it.
Did you ever go to St. Nick's Pub?
Yes.
Oh, yes. That was my spot. I used to play at the Sunday night jam with TC the Third.
Emily.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Linda.
I want to make 2 points. One is, I think we have a task force at the table up there. I don't know that we
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good.
And if they would help get behind it and support that, that's
Yes.
really what we need.
Mhm.
Yes.
With World Cup, thank you for mentioning that. That's
Yep.
a deadline for us. I feel like if we can come up with a plan by this fall and present it to those folks, it's already happening in Kansas City. I mean, we're a vital jazz community. We're
Yeah.
one of those cities that is the cradle of jazz. And yes, we like to look back and look at our past because that's how we got to where we are today. But today's jazz scene is really vital and impressive. And I'm so glad you're here, Amber, because I came to Vine Street and saw your show last month, and I was like, blown away. But I mean, I think we've got some momentum. Keep it going, and keep talking, keep meeting, keep comparing notes, because it's all right here. Have it.
Yes, and I think going back to this starting small, right? Let's put it into action. Let's not just leave it words.
You know, Emily brought up very astutely, I thought, two key words that we haven't talked about yet here this evening, and that's World Cup. Again, the opportunity is significant, maybe magnificent. Is there any thoughts on, you know, Emily talks about getting a plan together by fall. That makes a lot of sense to me, too. But we got to get that together to present and push in time to actually get it done. I don't know where we are organizationally with that, David.
I've been approached by a person in the community that has done development, a lot of development. And she has asked that we, the jazz ambassadors, create a list of the musicians and put it on our website. And then also that I love to walk, so I'll go out and look at spaces that would be good places for music. So look for places that, like, you wouldn't think there could be a band there, but it could, you know. And then she wants to pair, like, corporate people with to go to the website, find the musicians they want, and put a band, you know, put a thing together. So somebody, you know, this if you give a band a rose garden to play in, or the corner of a street that's busy with people, or like down on the plaza, there used to be shows on the plaza. We'd have 300 people sometimes, you know, stopping traffic, you know, having a ball.
Or the airport, David.
The airport, yeah, the airport. Yeah, there's all kinds of places to play music. And so if the music is everywhere, then you're going to get the impression, you're going to know that this is a jazz town, this is a music town. And it is a music town. It's one of the most significant ones in the world. That's why when we go as musicians to places, and you say, I'm from Kansas City. Oh, what do you play? Come on up and play a song with us, you know? And all of a sudden you have this language. It's the language of Kansas City music, you know? So, yeah.
I mean, I just flew through Nashville. I just flew through New Orleans. Musicians in the airport. Nothing when I came home to Kansas City. It was very nice and quiet, or unnice and quiet. Yeah.
Too quiet. Scary quiet.
Yeah. Other thoughts on World Cup? Anybody from this table here?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard multiple different things going on. Our organization is built into our strategy sessions around it, but I just keep going back to, you know, what Emily was saying, what we've been saying. Like, it's right here. Like, it's in this room. It's online. Let's just bring it together and figure out how to do it together. Because, like what David is saying, like, that should be a given, right? Like, you know,
one objective coming out of tonight could be coming up with this plan by fall to present to city leaders. That's one thing that could be on the table. Anybody else on the World Cup?
Yeah, I'll just say that our
Dina.
organization has been meeting with ArtsKC, which has been pulling arts organizations together and talking about World Cup and ideas, and then internally we've been talking about it, and so we're not quite sure where we're headed. We need to get our plan together soon. We know people will want to come to the 18th and Vine area. They'll want to visit our museums down there. So we're still planning, but open to any ideas of partnering with any of these folks that I'm sitting here with as well.
I think this is going to give Kansas City a chance to show that we are the world-class city of music. When the World Cup comes in, and there's lots of opportunities. Also, we shouldn't forget about the venues of the club owners that are employing a lot of the musicians in town, because that can be a partnership with some of those things, the brunches and the things like that. Also, if we can do a pub crawl and get the people out there, probably transportation may be a problem to begin with, but it's something, but it's something that we should.
We have that streetcar,
Yeah,
right?
streetcar prep crawl.
But it does.
On the streetcar, and I sat there and was very quiet. All I heard was the mayor speaking. But this would be such a great opportunity. I don't know who to talk to, but we should be playing. Our local jazz musicians are on there. Like, hey, you can catch us on 18th and Final, blah, blah, and then you hear our music. There's no music.
Or put the musicians on the streetcar.
Yeah.
Whatever. But if you're sitting there and it's quiet, there's no music playing. And then the mayor will come in and say something, and then it's quiet again. So that's an opportunity. I don't know who runs that situation, but that's you're going to have all these influx of people that's going to get on that streetcar. And I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I have a question.
We'll go here, then we'll go there. Yeah.
The World Cup is much more immediate and could give us tremendous exposure. Long term, is there anyone in the jazz community that has even had conversation with the new plaza developers? We need to get jazz back on the plaza. Do any of you know? Has there been any conversation about that?
I have not.
There's someone who said, a contractor who built the club called the Nighthawk in the Kansas City Hotel, which is a beautiful club. He said that there's 3 that he's working on the plaza. I think Houston's old place would be awesome for a jazz club. It's beautiful, beautiful setting. It's on a side street, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
But
I mean, it's the premier, and Steve, I know you've had him on your show frequently. In the plaza, it is the showcase of our city. We shouldn't have just one spot.
no, it should be everywhere.
Should be like
It should be
everywhere,
throughout
yeah.
the city.
Yeah,
And that might be where we get the younger people in.
absolutely.
Particularly during World Cup as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, the problem with Kansas City is we have too many things. And when I moved here, I was 40 years old, now I'm 74, I've been here a while. And I said, there's so many things going on in Kansas City, you couldn't do them in your lifetime. There's things that I have wanted to go to that I haven't been able to go to in these 30 years because there's too many things. But my ears really perked up when you talked about funding, because I was the executive director of the Kansas Society of CPAs. We had money because we're accountants, right? But, there's the Kansas City Community Foundation. What about the Jazz Community Foundation, where all the funds come together and then it's distributed among the jazz?
I like that.
Yeah.
And don't discount
I like that.
the old people. I've offered young people, but they don't have the money. It's the old people that have the money. It's people that have been around, that have loved jazz for decades, that support it, that maybe can't go to all the events, but are willing to, say, hey, I want the young people involved, so I'm willing to get some, $1,000 here or $2,000 there.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm guessing several people in here have been down to New Orleans during the French Quarter Festival, not the one out at the fairgrounds, but the French. And you walk, they've got 25 stages spread all over the French Quarter. It's all free. It's music everywhere going on all day for days. And it seems to me that the Visit KC people are hungry for these ideas. The trolley line, so the challenge is, okay, where do you park it? So the West Bottom's totally walkable to a lot of places, but the trolley line by then is going to go all the way down to the stadium where soccer's happening. The entire path can be jazz joints.
Well, and
Within a block of jazz joints.
And so that brings us to infrastructure, and so to the question here about what do we do after. So I think the key is we need a plan now. We need to be able to leverage that to get the infrastructure built, and then we can capitalize on it after. Because, we think about like what happens when the Olympics comes to a city, right? Mm-hmm. And they build all these things, and then if they can keep it going, it's amazing. So here's an opportunity, right? We're going to have all these people from all over the world come, and they're going to be hungry for things to do. And I love what you said, Linda, about, it's not just jazz. This is world-class music in Kansas City all around, right? Like, jazz is one of that piece, right? But it is all music. This is a music town. It always has been. And hopefully it will always be one.
Well, and just to be clear, as our time's going to get short here in a few minutes, I'm hearing a couple things, and help me if I'm missing something, but this idea of collaborating on a plan for the World Cup, coming up with a plan by fall. I'm hearing about the need to continue these kinds of meetings maybe 3 times a year to keep everybody in touch. What else do we want to come out of tonight with all of you here? What else are we hearing that needs to be on this list as we walk out the door tonight?
I don't know. That's pretty ambitious right there. I'm just gonna say, like, just coming up with a plan. That's going to be more than 3 times a year to come up with that. So
it needs to be perpetually funded. If we focus on the World Cup, when the World Cup's over, we can go, oh, wasn't that fun? The World Cup. Wish we could do that again. But there are easily 1,000 jazz musicians in Kansas City. 1,000, easily. Think of all the musicians who went through Bobby's program at UMKC, and most of them are like, "Oh, I don't want to go anywhere else. I love Kansas City. It's fun." And then there's all these other genres of music, and it's a great opportunity. But we need a fundraising idea that's going to bring it all together. There's plenty of money. We just have to find the money and give people a good reason to support, music for our city.
I think the thinking behind coming up with a plan for the World Cup is that hopefully there'll be FIFA money or something to begin to support that kind of common vision if we can come up with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a way to show everybody here what they're missing, that they didn't know that they were missing it, right? So sometimes you don't know what you have until you don't have it anymore, in a way. You don't know what you have until somebody else comes in and tells you how great it is.
So my math says we got about 5 months before fall to come up with this plan. As we leave here again, what are some next steps that we can begin to wrap our arms around to begin to come up with some kind of plan that can go to KC Arts Group, or maybe it's already in process? I'm not sure. I just wanted to throw it out.
I would say finding another time to meet, and maybe bringing some concrete ideas to the table about what our individual organizations can do. Like Dr. Bennett was saying, we also have attended the ArtsKC meetings, and I know Folly's been there, and there's a lot going on there. So I haven't been to one in a couple months, so I'm not sure where we're at with that. But I would say that we could easily, with the group of us that are here, come up with a lot of ideas and narrow it down to some really concrete ones.
And if we came up with one plan together, that would carry some weight with that organization.
Yes,
I'm
and
sure.
I think that's the thing, is a lot of people in the organization are like, well, jazz is important, jazz needs to be a part of this, and but there's a lot of other things that are important that want to be a part of it as well in the arts community, as they're representing the whole arts community. And so I think if we were able to kind of come up with, okay, here's the jazz idea, that would help a lot, actually.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
I'm sensing that.
So I was just going to say, I'm going to say it again, is that we need to know about the funding. That I haven't been able to ascertain from those meetings at ArtsKC.
I'm told FIFA's been very reticent about coming forward with what it can offer.
Okay. Yeah. So, because we have programmed musicians at the airport that are playing in the baggage claim area when people come through. We'd love to do it again, but we don't ask our musicians to do anything free.
Right.
We
Right,
always pay them.
Of course.
So we just need to know what's going on. And then I'm not so sure of the streetcar. Yeah, it doesn't come down to 18th and Vine. So that's the thing we have to consider is, transportation to us. How's that going to work, if it works at all?
But I think the assumption is that at some point FIFA is going to step forward and say, here's what is available financially. They're also going to be not until early next year before they're going to announce what the different satellite sites are. Like Lawrence is trying to become a satellite site, but it's not going to find out until January or February, just a few months before the games, in terms of is it going to be a practice site or not. There's some issues here.
I heard that on your radio show, Steve.
It's called Up to Date, David.
Yeah, Up to Date on
9
KCR.
a.m. weekdays.
Twice a day it's on.
Yeah.
Plus you have a
Twice a day.
podcast too.
Yeah.
But I think that what happens is, here, about the funding, Dr. Bennett, it's like if you have a balloon and it doesn't have a lot of air in it, you start pushing it one way and everything goes over here, or push it that way and it goes up this way or whatever, and you're like we have to think more of like a holistic approach. Like if you bring a band in that costs you a lot of money to the Folly, or you bring a band in for a week at the Jazz Museum, how many things can they get done while they're here? Musicians love to go to schools. Musicians love to do clinics. Musicians love to play with young musicians. And once you start doing that, you have this synergy that just goes. It just really starts making things happen. And what has happened for musicians, the reality of it now is flights are late. There's not enough money for the, you talk to a musician after a show and they say, well, no, I've got to leave at 5 in the morning. I have to get up at 3. It's 11 o'clock now. No, I'm not going to go anywhere tonight. Whereas it used to be musicians would come and they had time. They could hang out a day or two or something like that. That's how I met Les McCann. I met Al Gray down down at 18th and Vine, and took him to Paseo High School when he was here years ago. And Logan Richardson was like, Logan Richardson and many other musicians we know were in like the 7th and 8th grade, and they came to see Al Gray play, and he blew them away. And these musicians now are in their 40s, and they're still playing it, and they still talk about the way that they got to connect with that first generation of jazz musicians. So it's it's there. It's just to do it. Just really do it.
Just an observation, because I host Up to Date at weekdays at 9 a.m. on KCUR 89.3.
Yeah.
But you do get the sense that this whole FIFA thing, this World Cup thing, there's lots of ideas, lots of loose ends out there, that if this organization came up with a concrete plan and said, we can implement this plan for $2 million or $3 million, that your ability to get that funded whenever FIFA does come around to saying, yeah, we can do it. If you have a concrete plan, your odds of success of getting that implemented are going to go through the roof. That's just me talking based on what I'm hearing from the mayor and lots of other people on Up to Date at 9 a.m. on weekdays. Yeah, so, yeah.
This would be a nice group of people to have on your show sometime, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had some of those people on. Yeah. Yeah.
What is the status of corporate sponsorships with all of your organizations? Because very few arts organizations can survive without big money. So what do you feel, do all of you have corporate sponsorships that you get funding from?
I can jump in here. So for us, it depends on what it is. So that's one of our biggest challenges, actually, is getting corporate sponsorship. I know that there are nonprofit organizations in town that do have relationships with corporate sponsors that are a broader sponsor over a series or a bigger scope of what they do. But for us, it's for a gala, for instance. That's where it kind of comes in for us. I don't know about anyone else.
We're pretty similar. We have corporate sponsors for our gala, but we aren't as big as some other organizations, and so it's all about numbers. It's all about, how many people are going to be in your building and how many people are going to see my ad, and I'm not going to put my bank's name in front of your series if you're going to reach, even if we sold out 6 jazz series, that's 6,000 people. That's not much to some corporations. So we just don't have the numbers to get that.
But an opportunity is what you're suggesting, I think. Yeah. Okay. Final thoughts, real quick, from anybody? It's been a great panel, a lot of great ideas. Let's give everybody a round of applause for taking time tonight. So appreciated you all being here tonight. I hope you all get together sometime soon and continue the work. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.